Why? Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Town of New Shore Town Council Town Manager Work Session for Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022. We're having a hybrid meeting via Zoom and in person at Town Hall. If you'd like to dial in the open session Zoom access, the numbers are listed on the agenda, which can also be found on Clerk Base under New Shore. We don't have the bandwidth to support a video link for members of the general public. So to participate, quote, raise your hand on your phone by pressing *9, mute and unmute by pressing *6. To see the supporting documents for this agenda, go to clerkbase.com, New Shore, Rhode Island, or please dial in and watch on the New Shore YouTube channel. While Martha will be right back. I just want to announce that we don't have an amended agreement for the National Grid Cable Project.
But I can.
Oh, you still want to? All right, then I'll.
Do you want me to wait for?
Yeah, wait, and then I'll
Councilwoman
just
Ball
wait till
to get
Martha
back?
gets back.
Yeah.
I didn't know if we were going to discuss the item this evening.
Yeah, we can discuss what we have agreed to that we just finalized literally in the last hour.
All right, thank you. But I will note that at our 7 o'clock meeting, the meeting with the Commission on Motor Vehicles for Hire to discuss the point-to-point taxi service, there's been some scheduling issues with some of the members. So that has been rescheduled to our March 7th meeting. So, and we'll just give Martha a few minutes.
You're doing nice. Nice shake of pepper.
Jim Murphy. Joe Murphy. Yes, John Doherty permission broadband and Joe Murphy National Grid.
Thank you so much. And Jim Jeremiah. Jeremiah.
Thank you all for standing by. Council Paul.
First item on our.
You're welcome. First item on the agenda is to discuss and act on the amended easement for the National Grid Cable Project. Marion?
So just to provide a council with an update, I know this evening you were hoping to see the actual easement. That easement will be for you on Monday night on the 7th. There's some terms and conditions that we were trying to finalize in the last few days. Just, I can let you know what terms and conditions were agreed upon. National Grid will pay, they anticipated coming out on the island the end of March, beginning of April. Be $26,000 they'll pay us within 15 days of execution, the same thing that they did last spring. There was a couple of items that Mission Broadband had recommended that would be included in the easement, specifically the testing of the splicing. National Grid was going to test it once the splicing was done. They requested that they being the town, Mission Broadband will be testing, or Zertex will be doing the testing so that the town will have the opportunity to test the splicing after National Grid has done. If there's a problem with the splicing after the testing, National Grid has guaranteed replacement of up to 8 fibers if there's a problem. That was one of the points that we really needed to be sure that was in place. Because we started with 8, we want to be sure once they test that we will have 8 afterwards. And there was a little bit of concerns and discussion about that, and we convinced National Grid that that's something that was very important to us and that they would agree to. Also, once the cable is bound up before it's thrown in, it will be tested again by Zertex. National Grid has requested that if necessary, right now they will be leaving on the 25th of May. However, if by chance they need to stay longer, they have requested to stay on longer if they need to finish the project up to June 10th. At that point, they have agreed to a $5,000 a day additional funding to the town for each day after May 25th. Final language will be worked on in the next 24 hours, and I will have that to the council prior to the meeting on Monday, and hopefully before the weekend.
Certainly, thank you for that update. Is there anybody on the,
I'm sorry?
is there anybody on the, that was to speak on this?
National Grid is on, Joe Murphy is on, and also John Dougherty from Mission Broadband is on.
All right, thank you. Council, how do you want to handle that? Do you want to have any comment now, or do you want to wait to hear from the representatives?
I'm fine to wait.
Okay. Whoever would like to speak first on that behalf, maybe Grid?
I would suggest you go with National Grid.
National Grid? All right. Is it Joe Murphy?
Correct.
Joe Murphy from National Grid.
Joe, you're muted.
There we go. Can you guys hear me okay now?
We can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so Marianne did a great job summarizing the
Oh,
agreement that we've reached.
I can look the volume up.
How's that? Can you hear me now?
Yes, you good?
Okay.
Thank you for bearing with us.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Yeah, so Marianne did a great job summarizing the agreement that we've reached. And so we're just going to work over the next 24 hours to get the agreement in place so we can be presented to the town council for approval on Monday. So happy to answer any questions you have. We didn't have any additional comments this evening.
Thank you so much. Anybody?
I have a question on compensation. Who came up with the $5,000 per day if they run over?
That was part of the negotiations.
I don't think it's enough. I recall 5 years ago where I remember putting a higher figure on it, and for some reason it seemed to recharge their batteries to get it done in a timely fashion, so we wouldn't be flirting with the summer season. I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but it doesn't seem to be enough to me.
So just to provide some background in that regard, it went back to June of 2016. At that point, in the early part of June, it was $4,860. And then once it got to like June 21st and on, it was like $9,200 or $9,800. So 5,000 is a little higher than what was agreed to back in 2016.
So is there a tiered system to it if it goes more than a week?
We told them, they have to be done by June 10th. The beaches are opening. That's when the beach open, the concession stand starts. Things get really ramped up by the June 15th. So we told them they have to be done by June 15th. I'm sorry, June 10th.
Everybody at this table, and I think everybody in Iowa wants that to happen. My concern is if it doesn't happen, how are we going to be compensated? How well are we going to be compensated? Because it seems that we've always negotiated poorly when it comes to a dollar figure. If something happens, unfortunately, that extends all the required work from being done. Could we put some kind of stipulation after June 1st? It doubles. After June 7th, it triples. Some kind of safety net in there to make sure we are not imposing or not getting too close to that summer season.
Sven, go ahead.
We'll come back to that, Mark, because it's still, you brought the point up. I guess my question would be, I happen to like a tiered approach, but I think Marianne, in my opinion, has sort of said, hey, to June 10th, it's this. The question is, after June 10th, if they're not done, which for whatever reason, and they leave, okay, are they coming back in the fall? Like, what happens when not done? And the implications to not done have a whole other set of trickles, right? So I guess as long as it's written in the contract as of June, well, point of view, written in the contract of June 10th, what happens when not done? What are both financial implications and, more importantly, work implications? That's one point. The second point would be how to deal with Memorial Day. So Memorial Day is obviously a big bump, right? A lot of people come out, a lot of people want to be on the beach. And then 5 days after, there's the normal dip. So I guess I would encourage provisions regarding Memorial Day about cleanup, not working during those days, enabling people to go to the beach and have that area. So that's the point of view from me.
We discussed Memorial Day weekend, they will not be working. So, Yep. Yep.
This is my
Martha?
I mean, my concern with putting all of these caveats in beyond June 10th, I feel like we're just saying, I want them done and I want them out of here. And I want it done right. And there's obviously got to be some way of dealing with it if something happens. But I hate even giving them that opening. I understand what you're saying, Mark. And I was only when I heard the other numbers did I feel better about the 5,000. But I just feel like we're setting ourselves up.
Keith?
My question is the same as it's been for a while, and that is, I don't want to vote for an easement approval until I hear from Jim and Matt and Tom Reesum et al. That the plan for the remediation is acceptable to the town, that they feel confident that it will be executed, and that the appropriate money has been set aside to do that. That's, as a practical day-to-day matter for people who live here, it's the parking lot. The parking lot is something that sticks in people's craw. So that's the key to whether I support it.
So after we get through this conversation, you'll hear from Jim Jeremiah and company about the south parking lot.
Thank you, Marianne. I'm going to hold off for now. Do you want to put Jim?
Approval on this tonight.
Right, not tonight. I understand.
And
That's
thank you for that.
That's why these work sessions are good, because then we can discuss this now, and then when we come to a vote on Monday, then hopefully realistic concerns are, incorporated. Does anybody else want to let Jim Jeremiah go?
Joe Murphy's all set, yes. We'll move on to the parking lot.
Thank you. Jim Jeremiah?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, the south parking lot, we have had very good discussions with Ofsted, with National Grid subcontractor, and they have agreed to pay all costs associated with I'll call it the rehab of the south parking lot. Working with Tom and the police chief, we looked at the soil conditions that are there. And it's clear that during the operation that occurred in the past 2 years, siltation has occurred and causing the blinding, I'll call blinding, or the preventing of percolation of the groundwater, of the stormwater into the ground. We did a cross-section this afternoon to double check and to confirm our thoughts and approach. The first is that we recently, or it's in the mail as we're told from CRMC, we have a maintenance ascent that allows the town annually to go in and clean up the parking lot to take the dune sand that blows over through the winter months into the parking lot. That'll be the first approach we take. There is obviously at least 4 inches of dune, what I'll call dune sand in the parking lot that will be removed and put back on the dunes. But there is a section, a cross section of about 8 inches of material that was brought in to stabilize the parking lot during the construction. That material has to be removed. Now that material at 8 inches, we're talking about over 800 cubic yards of material. So in order to expedite and make sure this goes along smoothly and in operation for May, the plan is that we will take that 8 inches of material, excavate it, and do a gradation. We would there would be screening operation at that parking lot where we would take the gravelly material and separate that into one phase. And then we would take the sandy material and try to separate all of the silt that is in that layer. The silt clay material that's present there is causing the soil not to percolate and flow through. Because when we did the test pit, once we got past that 8 inches and we just got into the virgin material, the water just it went in as it disappeared as fast as it was coming in. So the idea is to get that 8 inches, bring it back to as normal a condition as we can. Now, obviously, we're going to have to, we'll do a screening, take out all the fines, and separate what I'll call the stony material, bony material, that's 1.5 to 1/2 inch material. We will lay that, spread that out. We would then come back in and put the gravel, sandy material on top of that, and taking the fines, the clay material, and removing that and disposing of that. That material can be used on numerous places. Mike Shea fills in the revetments along Corn Neck Road, so that material can be used. And the final option is to bring in some good, well-graded gravel material, sandy material, that would be on the top layer. And that would be purchased and paid for by National Grid subcontractor for all of that material. But that amounts to about 300 yards of 300 to 400 yards of material. So obviously 300 to 400 yards of material is quite a bit to get over to the island. So we're going to start that immediately, get some sites where the soil, the gravel meets our requirements, and contract with, let's say offshore or a company like that, that'll bring in the 30-yard dumpsters, bring it over on a regular basis. So after the screening operation takes place, we can be placing this material and bringing it back up to current grade. The screening operation, speaking with Bain Transit, who has a contract with the town, he indicated it'll probably take a week. Let's give him 1 to 2 weeks. He would begin immediately upon the authorization of the town to begin that operation. So that's the game plan. And as my understanding is that the subcontractor will be paying all the costs associated with this operation.
Thank you, Jim.
And you guys are comfortable with that approach?
Yes, we are.
Yep.
We've gone over a number of options.
It's
This to me looks as the being the most effective way of doing things.
I'm glad you spoke first.
That's great.
God.
Jim, thank you, and Matt and Tom. That's an important thing to get done, and I really appreciate you guys paying attention to it. Thank you.
Okay, and Jim, this is Martha. We're going to get everything cleared all the way back to the fences, right?
Correct.
Thank you.
Whatever was the preconditions, that's where we're going to. So we're going to establish, and we'll get it there on site to determine the limits and get it back. Now, when you say the fence, are we talking the guardrail or are we talking?
The fence on the east side of the parking lot, the one that did not get dug out last year.
Okay, yes, that'll be taken care of.
It is submerged now.
Yes.
I don't go to that beach. And up around the, I guess I'd like to see the whole thing get cleaned up, because it's been one way or another their responsibility or their being in the way that hasn't allowed it to get done.
My intention and direction to the contractor is I'll look at it as the walkway coming into the beach on the south side that divides the two parking lots. From that point, going all the way to the exit is going to be restored to the conditions that we expect it to be, as opposed to, partially excavating, in some areas. We're going to, we have a maintenance agreement with CRMC, so we have to work within that cleaning, let's call it cleaning and bringing back the dunes within that operation. So we will do that.
Because I was in there today around probably before you were, and there are fences that if you don't know they're there, you don't even know they're there. And this is obviously, as everyone's really tired of hearing me talk about it, but I do drive by it every day and I see what doesn't get done. Very much.
Thank you, Martha. And you beat me to it, because I was actually going to mention that, because Martha's always had these comments at these meetings, and I'm just wondering if you did have your suggestions, because you drive by there every day and we can hear from all the engineers we want, but you drive every day and know what it's supposed to look like. So has Martha gone down there, and can you go down there with maybe Matt or something and tell him what you just repeated? And well, I don't know, I just want to make sure that it gets right.
Perhaps maybe not as much as we thought so before this invasion, but they are a country that actually spends more of their GDP on the the United States does. It is a ethno state that prioritizes.
What was that?
I think Ray had his TV on.
Sure.
Well, we certainly understand.
Hey, Jim, this is Sven. Two quick questions. One, you mentioned 4 inches of sand, 8 inches of gravel, silt, clay, that 800 cubic yards. I'm assuming those are additives. So is that 12 inches? And now the question is it going to be restored back to that 12 inches? Or are we probably going to see a drop? And then the second question is, you mentioned 1 to 2 weeks of screening. What do you think the total length of the project will be? So if it starts next week or 2 weeks, is that a 4-week project? I mean, just trying to gain.
ideally, if we can line up, it's really going to depend on the gravel and the frequency of bringing the trucks over.
Materials, yeah.
And so that's going to be the question, but my plan would be is we would bring it to what we'll call it subgrade. Okay, we would take all the screenings, put it back where what screening material we want, we put it back in, and then we go back and bring in the gravel up to the elevation, the pre-existing elevation. So
Thank you.
it would be, so as the trucks come to the island, they'll be dumping in the area that's already been set up for them to dump. And periodically, Bain will come in and level sections off as he moves forward and out of the facility. So you'll see progress when we'll call it a subgrade. And at that point in time, Martha should, with her input, just say, that's the limits of where we are. And then we can go from there and continue to bring in the final top 8 inches plus of material. There is always going to be a little bit of change in elevation, only because the elevation that exists now is contributed by the storm events that have occurred over the winter months. So some of that is always, every year, a couple of inches of material is removed from the site as a cost of maintenance. And that I recommend we continue doing, because if we don't take the fines and the dune material out of there, eventually all the work we do to make this well-draining gravel in there, it's going to blind it again, and we're going to be back in the same situation.
Thank you.
That's what happened.
Yeah.
It's like the curse of Oak Island. It's the money pit. Just comes caving in.
Marianne, thank you so much for paying attention to this.
You're welcome. I'm not a one-man show, as I always say. The staff has been wonderful, so.
Do we have anybody else anybody else want to talk on the subject on the?
I got one thing to say.
Oh, go ahead.
Before we open it up. You talked about staff, and I was lucky enough to pull in when they were doing the excavation there, or the dig, to see just what the problem was. So I got a little science lesson, and when Jim, you described what was taking place, you simplified it. You made it understandable for even me, just what was taking place. My only question to you was, what's going to happen with material that's taken up that's no longer needed? And you already told us that it's going to be repurposed for the town, which is just what I want to hear. The last question I have, is it unusual to have an escrow account of some kind, just in case their finished work doesn't work, so that it can be, the money is there to correct it if it has to be done again?
It's always what you negotiate with N-Grid's, National Grid's subcontractor. It's not unusual to have a warranty period to bring this out. We're trying to do it the most cost-effective way. We're not, saying let's just move all the material and bring in new material at a very costly price. I don't think it's unreasonable to consider that when we talk with the subcontractor and the payment terms on this matter.
Jim could say the warranty be till Columbus Day, so we could fully evaluate this taking place over the course of the summer?
I would say that's a reasonable time frame, because obviously we would go through the summer rain events. I was there in November when it was a good foot of water in that area there. So, and it's just standing. Now, remember, I want you to recognize something though, that the stormwater from the roads do come into the parking lot. So I just want everybody to, so there will be drainage from the road that comes in there. That's why it's important in that area to make sure it infiltrates rapidly, because that area there is impervious. There's a lot of runoff. So that's critical, and it's not unusual to have a warranty period. That October is not unreasonable. I think it's fair.
Jim, I would go to the end of October.
Yeah, I always, after Columbus, anything after, towards the end of October and be done with it. Because of the rains.
And Marianne, is that a pre-discuss? I mean, so that's with National Grid / Orsted and the subcontractor, right?
Orsted has taken the lead on this, so it'd be with Orsted.
Thank you. And thank you.
So what do we do with the other parking lot?
So the north
North
parking lot, once the next time Jim Jeremiah is on the island, we're gonna ask you to come down with some of the pictures that you said you've had from previous years, so we can start taking a look at that and start addressing that. National Grid will be there for the next, for the next 90 days anyway, so we would have to start addressing that later.
We must have plans in here from when we did the south end. I mean, it was my understanding that at the time that we only did the south end because we ran out of time. And that's why we didn't do the north end.
I can look for plans. I'm not familiar with any plans.
Sam should know.
Okay.
He worked on that, because that's, I'm gonna be banging around in the back row of the meeting room complaining about that for years.
I know Tom Rism has been in contact with
Well,
Sam.
the other people in this room can attest, that's the only thing I would come to meetings and complain about.
Moynihan's gonna come pick you up, and you're gonna go talk to our DPW, and you're gonna tell them what you want. Because you're still knowledge of the lot. I don't want at the end of this project, I want no complaints from Mount the Mall. So you're gonna participate.
It's not Martha. We all pass by that all the time. I have questions why that was widened and all that Rosa Rugosa is there now. I'd love to see it unwidened or widened correctly so there's more parking, and repurpose all that Rosa Rugosa somewhere else where it could be beneficial.
That's what I was trying to say. It's supposed, the north lot was supposed to be the south lot.
Can I just ask, oh, I'm sorry, Sven, go ahead,
I
please.
think there's a discussion really with Sam and Matt and others, because I know that I believe Sam was running the project at that time, and I don't know what he agreed, or what the town quote agreed to, or whatever. And that may be where there's a bit of a rub.
Sure.
But let's get it
Yeah.
as large as possible, because we know parking is the issue.
I just had a technical question for Jim about the north parking lot. Is it your sense that the same condition exists there that we're experiencing in the south parking lot?
During the rain event, the couple of rain events that I experienced, I didn't see I saw the drainage, the water move quite rapidly through the ground. But we have to take a look at it. And as we're doing this work on the south, I'm going to be there looking at the north end and probably doing some sieve analysis to determine if what we're finding there exists on both sides, because that layer that we found in the parking lot by excavating it is not natural. It's not something that we brought in, the community brought in to do that. So we want to take a look, and it is a good point we should probably do some test holes to make sure that there is no other material that they brought in to stabilize the work area.
Right. And it seems to me that the easement ought to contemplate, if it doesn't already, the restoration of that.
Correct.
Great. Terrific. Thank you.
And it's the original easement has that.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Either way, and
Thank you
just so
so
you
much.
know, with cell phones, Tom Rism just texted me, said he has the plans in his office. So to answer your question, we do have the plans.
Where is he? Mission Broadband, do they want to say anything?
I don't think so.
Okay. Brian? All good?
Unless you have any questions first.
No, I don't think we do.
It's done.
We got until 7, so if anybody's got anything on the topic. Hey, knock it off. Sven, go ahead.
Sven, let me just thank Marianne, Matt, Mike Shea, Bain Transu, Tom Rism, Jim, for all of you, all the hard work you did on this.
Or will do. I'm adding the future tense.
They were all there today.
Marianne, can I just ask a quick question? I know it's going backwards for a minute. I apologize. The 8 strands into the cable, that is the original level, right? So
Correct.
we are making sure that we get what we started with versus 15% less.
Correct.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure.
There's a lot of, never mind.
No, thank you.
So these,
I might have.
Those straight 8 strands haven't become obsolete in the 5 years since we got that, have they?
Absolutely not.
Already. Brian.
Amy from the back row, Martha. So Marianne, just to clarify what we're gonna have you, we're working on the easement. It wasn't quite done.
Correct, the language isn't done. We'll have the language and everything done, sent to the council this, probably before, definitely before the weekend.
With consideration of what was discussed here this evening.
Correct.
And just to circle back to, I'm happy with, what Mark, pretty much what Mark just said. The staff's done a great job. So I just want to make sure that we're clear what we're voting on Monday. If there's any questions that come up before the final thing, just let Mary Ann know. Just so we have something straightforward and simple. All right, I guess that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great evening, everybody.
And thanks for coming. Is Grid still on the line? Anybody?
We are. Yep, we're still here.
I want to thank you for working with our staff of our town to see this through. Obviously, you can see what the concerns are. So we look forward to, working through these issues to, get that job done once and for all down there.
We do as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, well. Anything else? I mean, Millie, do we have to adjourn until 7?
Yeah, I have to take a recess.
Motion to take a recess until, it's 6:39, till what? Well, till 7, till not 7:05, Martha.
Second, if there was.
Seconded by Sven. Mark, all in favor, Sven? Keith, I'm in favor. Martha's obviously in favor. Thank you.
Thanks, Wilson. Thanks, Wilson. Both of you guys. Later, Brian. Microphones are still on.
Yeah.
Did you ever get one? Yes. So it helps with but it's nice. Yeah. They don't even look at why would I set it up?
That's just being honest. That's just being honest. You know, at UNC, the kids would all get an email. And then the professors were like upset because the kids wouldn't respond to email syllabi and whatnot. The kids just said, honestly, we just give the email to the parents because that's where the bills come. And we have Gmail, we have Twitter, like, we don't communicate like that. You know? But it's always that scenario that you're communicating in a way that you think they would like to communicate. You know, it's funny. Maybe my middle daughter is now radio silent. Maybe it's how I'm communicating with her. Maybe, so it gets better.
I don't want to. All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Town Council Town Manager Work Session for Wednesday, March 2nd, for the 7 p.m. Slot here. I will announce, as I did at the 6 p.m. meeting, that the item number 2 on the agenda, the meet with the Commission on Motor Vehicles for Hire to discuss the point-to-point taxi service. There's been some scheduling issues with that, so we're going to put that on the agenda March 7th. So we won't be discussing that this evening. So with that being said, we don't have the bandwidth to support a video link for members of the general public. So to participate, raise your hand on your phone by pressing *9, mute and unmute by pressing *6. The supporting documents for this agenda item is on Clerkbase News Shoreham. And if you'd like to watch on the YouTube, it's the YouTube channel News Shoreham. That being said, item number 1 on the agenda is meet with the Block Island Health Services to discuss items of mutual interest. Tonight we have Tom Workup, Dr. Workup with us, and Allison Warfel. So without any more time, I will let you guys start your presentation, and thank you for coming and giving this to us tonight. I did.
Or open the door.
The YouTube channel.
Also, Millie.
If somebody is watching YouTube and you want to see the presentation afterwards.
No, it's on YouTube.
It's on YouTube. Thank you.
Is the door open?
Yeah.
It was warming up.
It's coming.
And
It's coming. It's good.
Mark's prom. Mark's prom.
Thanks.
All right, well, thank you very, very much for having us. You know, I've been reflecting on this presentation for a while, and I don't think that we could have done this presentation 2 years ago. I can't believe it's almost been 2 full years. We've been a little busy, but the scenario is, I think it really allows for some kind of good dialogue around this. So Allison's going to help me out. She's going to move it to the next slide. You know, I think I want you to also kind of focus on my little prop over here, this radio. You know, I think the scenario that I often think about is, you know, when that radio goes off, we want to be there for it. You know, when Asia calls me from dispatch, we want to be there for it. And I think when people have a scare for a cancer diagnosis, we want to be there for it. And I think this particular conversation is really around this kind of beginning a dialogue of how do we develop a partnership with the town, other key stakeholders to try to make a healthcare process on here for what the island, what it could be. And I really feel a lot of kind of fortitude to really kind of try to make this both a transparency conversation. This is not trying to provoke an emotion. I'm not trying to provoke anything other than just some good dialogue, and you let us know how you want to see this in the future, but I'm just looking for help of how to push our healthcare mission for our island forward. Go to the next slide. So we're going to start with just kind of helping build an understanding of how the business runs and how you can maybe think about how do we make our healthcare on the island a little bit better. So we broke it down into urgent care and primary care. The big part on the urgent care side is I want you to look at this part. Urgent care for us is going to be for needs that are in excess of our regularly scheduled capacity. It does include our trauma, our 911 trauma. And then our primary care is where we take care of longitudinal medical needs for our island community. These are our diabetes, asthma patients, diabetic patients. It does include their physicals, but just to let you know that when you see some data, those are the definitions. So the great news here is right here to me. The great news is that the island's primary care is growing. We've had 537 additional unique patients in the last 3 years. So you can see here the unique patients growing right here. So we're now at 1,917 unique patients that use our medical center for primary care designated purposes, diabetes, physicals, asthma, hypertension, et cetera. And we made a little caveat here that 2020 numbers were down because the medical center was closed for those first 3 months at the beginning of the pandemic.
Dr. Workup, you used the word unique. Is that another category of trauma or medical? What is that?
It's a term we use to make sure that we're giving you the sense that we're not double counting people. So they're individual people. So they're not visits, they're actual people that make up the visits. And I'll expand that on. So if you go back, Allison. So here we had 1,917 patients that generated 5,156 visits. That's how I'd interpret that, okay? And then here, on the flip side, this urgent care process is decreasing, which is also great news. But part of it is that we have now been better at categorizing how these patient visits happen. We put them into our schedule in a more orderly manner, and then the office is transforming itself into a more primary care structure. I want you to pay attention to this. So you have 738 unique patients that generated 817 urgent care visits. That should be pretty accurate, right? We often have these people come in one-time urgent care need and leave. I want to set the stage. I want to give you this visual. For one full-time practice, one full-time employee practice, so one doctor, so Lori and I make up somebody that is there 52 weeks out of the year. A regular primary care practice at an average of 21 patients per day, plus the weekend hours that we have, would roughly equal 4,845 visits for the year. 20 and 21, we saw 5,973 patients. So the medical center saw 23% more patients than we would have been pre-budgeted for if you and I were on a mainland practice. That just gives you a scenario that we kind of busted the seams a little bit at times. And then here is the takeaway point is 7.7% of all of these urgent care patients require transport up to the island because they either their mechanism of injury or they need high-tech imaging that have to be done at kind of trauma centers or whatnot. But I would hope that we can continue to have a dialogue to help this become a trend. That we had 68 total transports in 2020. We had 64 total transports in 2024. So let's kind of keep this going and let's find creative ways that we can positively impact and lower kind of accident rates and whatnot. And what you have here is how these people got off the island. We have both Medevac, which is our helicopters, the New England Airline, the ferry, the Coast Guard, and then our police department. The police department specifically is always around behavioral health. I've had this conversation with Chief Moynihan that they're the only ones with statutory authority to get somebody in a behavioral health crisis off the island. They may designate it out to other places like EMSs or something, but that's how the police get involved in those particular scenarios. When we look back over the last 4 years, 82% of all of the visits in the medical center would be categorized as primary care. And we're proud to say that we've serviced over 24,000 patients in the 4 years that we recorded this data for you guys. And there's a lot on this slide, but this is an area that I want you to just at least be aware of, that with the 3,775 visits, this equals 87% of all of our urgent care visits those 6 months. And that in primary care, this breaks down to 53% of the primary care visits are in this same 6-month period. So we have a pretty even mix, 53% of primary care in that kind of peak season for us, and we have 47% in the off season. So we then have to somehow consume 87% of our urgent care visits in that same time period.
So what you're saying, primary care visits don't dramatically drop off in the summer.
Correct. We've built a foundation where we want to continue to address primary care needs all year and find a way to flex when the island certainly needs that. So growth is great, but there are medical realities. And the next couple slides are really just for business owners in this room. I want you to keep in mind, and I'll reiterate this, medical business doesn't follow normal business rules. And for this very fact, that our urgent care, we only get paid roughly 47 cents on the dollar. So we're giving you an 11-month aggregate here when we had stopped shutting off so we can talk about the data. So we have to adjust off $101,000 of what we bill. These are contractual obligations with Blue Cross, United, every person that has a position in this office, in this room, every single one of your offices do this, other than those physicians that can do cash. Sometimes psychiatry, sometimes plastic surgery, et cetera. But every other medical infrastructure in US medicine takes a discount. So right now our average payment is $46. This work RVU is a term that I've introduced to you guys, but it is commonly used in large academic health centers and large infrastructures like Lifespan and Care New England to try to gauge output. So when we talk about that 23% extra people, what they would do is they would say, there's national organizations that predict that number for a primary care doc, for an OBGYN, et cetera, et cetera. And they say you have to meet that need. This number is excessively high. So the average visit, which you'll see on the next slide, we can go to the next slide, Allison, is that it's about 2.21 medical complexity. Let's say it's a proxy for medical complexity compared to what we have to deal with the urgent care. And we get paid only 57%, so slightly better for primary care, and you can see the numbers there. So again, it's a scenario of giving you the concept that the harder we work, we actually take less revenue. How many businesses operate under those guidelines? Often, not many, but it's just to give you an example.
Is that a product of not having enough staff to do the billing, or?
No, it is really a product of US medicine has always moved towards fee for service. You get a service, you get a fee. And for insurance companies, they put downward pressure on trying to lower that. So you notice, you might hear in national media, like you got to work harder and harder and harder to keep the same status, if you will, of what you're billing. Now that we're moving to a total cost of care model, fee for quality, which has an impact for us here, this is a reality of that we are a small rural island health center that has no leverage with the 600-pound gorillas. And so therefore you get what you contract. So we get the basic contract.
Some sense of how that compares to a mainland primary care practice.
Every state's different. Every state's different where we rank. In Rhode Island ranks, I can check. I'm not sure if you know where we rank, generally speaking, but we're in the lower quartile for reimbursement. So, for example, like when we hear a lot about Lifespan and Care New England connecting and where some of that was being thwarted by the AG's office is because the reality of those mergers is so they now have greater leverage as insurers. And so therefore, institutions like where I came from at UNC, they grab market share, and use it as leverage. So the idea behind that though is that it pushes the affordability of healthcare. So this has nothing to do with our staff, it just is the reality of we're a small iron health center and you don't get a lot of leverage.
So if you're a small primary care practice in Narragansett, would you anticipate that you would have the same payment profile here, that it would be roughly 57 cents on the dollar?
Correct.
Okay.
And I'm going to show you some some steps that has been a movement in Rhode Island and nationally that we are now kind of on board with to try to help that reality for us a little bit.
Just trying to draw a right line between what's block island unique and what's kind of.
Yeah, we're probably very, very similar to a 1 or 2 person practice in Charleston or in West Philly that's doing their own thing. But this is why you might even have lived, your doctor now becomes part of Care New England, your doctor becomes part of Lifespan, because their reimbursement rates go up because they can leverage at a larger group. We're not part of that.
So Tom, let me just go back to that and what the other, that's Medicare, right? That's just Medicare repayments,
No.
okay.
No, this work RVU is a Medicare concept about productivity, but this is commercial Medicare. This is all commerce. This
Okay.
applies equally to Medicare as well as commercials.
But in Rhode Island, the Medicare rates for reimbursement have always been historically low.
Right. And what you'll find is that the commercial insurers follow the Medicare rate for your community because how Medicare originally came about is kind of maybe a lowest reimbursement. They said, if you're willing to take that, why would we give you more? And so therefore, they all kind of race to the bottom.
So you have a long track history in Rhode Island. Has any state, has any town tried to lobby the legislature for a raise in those rates? Has that been?
Usually every state has an insurance commissioner, and then you go back to an insurance commissioner and try to lobby for these particular rates, and often you're not met with a lot of success.
Could we try?
You can definitely try, but I think we have a better way through.
Okay.
On a future slide.
Going back for a second, your statement was BIHS gets less reimbursement for increased efforts. You get the same reimbursement, don't you? Or
Work at.
I understand urgent versus primary.
If we get the same reimbursement as, say, somebody else like us would get, the point there is that we have to, the work output, the amount of medical complexity that we have to put out with these urgent care visits
Versus a primary care.
versus a primary care visit is almost
Right.
double, and
Yep.
we get less money than we do for primary care. So I'm just kind of painting you a picture that as a business, you would likely skew yourself to where you get more reimbursement for less lift. And that's not the case here for urgent care. It's just purely to educate you how that works.
And that relationship is true almost everywhere, right?
That is correct.
I mean, so that's why, yeah, whether, that's why so many doctors have gone to, different kinds of plans that are more primary care based, everyday based versus dealing with the urgent care.
You got it. Yeah, absolutely. These next 2 slides, I'm not really going to speak to, but they're there for your reference if you want to talk about it. But I want to illustrate to you that we have a very rigorous process over the last 2 years. Allison has really been the architect of this, and we plan on doing more. We have a very rigorous collection process. So I just want you to feel that we work hard to try to get the resources and the monies that are owed to us, but there are limitations. This next slide, I think, maybe goes to your point a little bit, Andre, Sven, is that if I kind of tell you a story, 7:25, this radio went off, rescue squad. There's a moped accident, guy's unconscious, multiple lacerations. And, this individual gets brought to the medical center. The person gives us an inaccurate scenario of his insurance. You've never met him before. You're on the island, you're visiting. We submit the claim, it gets rejected. We have to rework the claim, it gets reviewed again, and the insurance company tries to say, well, you're not an ER, to Sven's point. Why would you be billing us for critical care services? You're not an ER, you're a primary care office. You should have sent us to the ER. And they don't understand the concepts that we deal with here. And then ultimately on 12/21, we got 13% of what we billed 5 months later. So just the illustration for anybody who's in business here, imagine taking 13% of what you asked them and they pay you 5 months later. But it's a model that the United States has developed. And
I'd like to walk up.
Yeah.
This would clarify something.
When we're defining urgent versus primary, urgent is basically everybody who comes here.
yeah, I would list as urgent as everybody that wasn't in a pre-scheduled slot. That were same day or by train.
So it could be, urgent might be a little misleading to some people, I think.
Also.
Because those are only 2 categories. There are only 2 categories.
For the illustration point, yeah.
But if you have someone who's, not that sick, who wouldn't be going to an emergency room on the mainland,
Mhm.
they come under urgent care here.
That's correct.
That's, so clarify
correct.
that. Thank
And
you.
even the 911 traumas come in as urgent care.
Yeah.
Just so we have a way to categorize and break out the data
Fundamentally, everybody who isn't primary.
is urgent care.
Yeah, great, thank you very much.
Okay, just make sure I get it. Anybody who isn't primary or anybody who hasn't made an appointment.
So
for
so
example,
you can have
somebody-
primary care patients that come for urgent care slots.
Right, but if somebody is not a primary care patient by the health center, health services, and they make an appointment because they, I don't know, you know, they did something, make an appointment and come, would that be urgent or would that be?
That would be a primary care visit.
Right.
Like at the beginning, the urgent care I want you to think of as it's beyond what we already have the capacity to see.
Right, so it's not necessarily who is your ongoing patient base, it's just somebody who makes an appointment.
Right. And usually those are
Not
going
scheduled, not
correct. And usually those are going to fall into categories as after hours, same day. So they fall into usually transient type of visitors to the island, not exclusively, but definitely as a proxy.
And the 23% you said that it's up, is that, how do you caveat COVID and COVID's effects on that versus remaining like practice? You seeing similar numbers on island?
No, actually, we're almost inverse. We've seen a growth despite COVID. So in 2020, we had people staying on island working remotely. So we had a very large year in 2020 because of those people staying on island. This year seems to reflect a little bit more of the normal population in the wintertime, but because we've, I think, done a decent job at cultivating people coming to the medical center for non-urgent issues. Come here for your primary care, come here for your diabetes. Don't feel like you have to leave the island. We've grown this kind of persistent base, business base that we want to take care of, but we then also have to take care of some of the other needs. This slide is really a question. It's a question for the town government. You don't need to have an answer, but it's a question. Is there a mechanism in a state to help manage medical expenses for a municipality? And this is just a good illustration that of our bad debt. So these are individuals that have not paid a nickel despite our efforts. 43% of them come from Rhode Island and 17% of them have come from our own zip code. So I don't want you to think it's New York, Connecticut, Florida. You can see that they're all fairly stable right here. But this is a Rhode Island thing as much as any other state. And I don't know if municipalities gain any kind of relief from the state, but it's something to think about if there's a mechanism you ever come across. 62%.
So on bad debt, I just asked, what's the process? Is that you guys calling to get it, or do you?
Yep.
So what does that dollar equate to? Is it worth going out and getting a collection agency to go after them, lift it off your team? And
Yeah, it's a great question. Generally for us, at the end of the process for us, we have about $25,000 to $20,000 as bad debt. So we've been thinking about outsourcing it, but traditionally it's been kept in-house.
But we do have collection agencies, so yes, we are.
Yeah, at the end of it, we have a soft collection stop process that we do, and then there's a collection agency. If that answers your question.
Can I just hold up? I don't, if you want to speak, just kind of raise your hand and let us know. And yeah, thank you.
Then we can say your name, if folks can't.
So 62%, this is where I think Allison had brought up some of this data, and I think it was really interesting to see it, and we want to dig a little bit further into it, but 60%, 62% of this bad debt comes from weekend and overnight claims. And what that comes from is that we don't have a normal workflow, right? There's nobody at the medical center at 1 a.m. to collect a credit card or collect an insurance card from someone who's unconscious, missing their teeth and a bone sticking out. Like, we're going to take care of the person in front of us, but it exposes limitations in our system. And that when we look over here, 18% of those individuals arrived via EMS, right? So that's our 911 trauma. That is not up for discussion. We will always be here for those people. But it's shocking that 82% could considerably be put off to the next day. It's non-emergent, as medical people would triage it, but there's a process in which we have developed on the island. So is this an opportunity to kind of improve that number for us? And it's because I can just tell you the reality. I don't know the background, but the reality is, if I fell or if somebody was at the National, we had this is a real life story. National had a blister on their thigh. 25-year-old girl called 911, and this was 11 o'clock at night. EMS shows up. They can't refuse. They show up there. They said it's a blister, but if that patient says, "I'm not refusing. I would like to be seen. They have this sense of obligation to bring them, even though I might be medical control and say, I'll deal with it tomorrow. We have to work that out. But then there's this compulsion to bring them to the medical center. And then an expectation that I open up the doors at 11 o'clock at night for a 25-year-old with a blister on her thigh. And that is kind of part of that 82%. So I'm saying, is there an opportunity for us to not only help give us the support, kind of just emotionally support us to say, we may make some changes that may be different than how it's been done in the past. But if there are some prevention measures that we can put in together here from an accident standpoint, that would be appreciated. That would be helpful.
Tom, can you, and maybe this is other data, or you can just give a guesstimate, of that 82%, how many are visitors, short period visitors?
Yeah, that's exactly the same question I had. And the way we are retrospectively looking at this data, but Allison and I want to prospectively be able to give you that answer.
Because I mean, the reason I ask is, and we'll get to this later, is, you know, there may be some education, whether it's hotels or businesses or whatever. It's like, hey, you know, can it wait? Or how do we sort of pre-work it? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I can actually give you a number that might be helpful to you on that front. I left it there for your reference, but urgent care, 12% of all of our urgent care are year-round residents, and 88% are seasonal or visitors. I want to break that down into how many are seasonal and how many are visitors.
So the assumption based on that number is a large part of that 82% are here for short periods.
That's what the data would suggest.
Inference.
Okay. And then this is something that this is kind of part of that larger philosophical conversation, right? There are some legacy issues that exist at the medical center and in the community. There are stalled initiatives at the medical center because you have a new doc every 3 to 5 years. And you know what made me think about it is there's a drawer at my desk, which has been signed by almost every attending over the years. And it made me think that I keep looking. And other than Dr. Miller and Dr. Prasad, everybody's here a year, 2 years, 3 years. So there's no momentum to keep moving forward with making this better. And I think Allison and I are dedicated here to try to make it better. And this 52% is really kind of the only point that I want you to really take home. And that if you take that 52% of after hours, and given the bad debt number we were talking about at about $20,000, only 7% of our total volume of patients create what is probably the vast majority of burnout. Why would a business forego 93% of its business for 7% of nonsensical, non-urgent needs that you're likely to take as bad debt? It's a question. You know, these are aggregates, but I wanted to illustrate to you that after hours care is a minority of what we do, and it's probably the biggest burden that we have. And to give you some illustrations again, right? In the clinical vignette, you know, think about this, the radio again, rescue squad, rescue squad. You know, Beth says we have a 64-year-old male crashed his moped. And my point here is thank you to Chief Moynihan. We had 67 moped-related medical incidents in 2020, and we only had 25 this year. I think your efforts have been spectacular. I think anything that we can do as a community to continue to support those efforts would be great. My point in showing you this is think about normal business models. This is 3 p.m. on a Tuesday in September. This guy has completely blown up our schedule because we are, as I've said before, thrusted into this relationship. This person is receiving critical care. This particular person has to be flown off the island, and there's the total charge plus a $10,000 life flight. He had a pretty expensive day on Block Island. But I really want you to appreciate that significantly less moped-related accidents, both all the things that the town and our police department did. So that's a huge win for us. The next one is, again, kind of, this one is employers. You know, this is where I think the chamber may be interested, right? So this is an employee on the island. So again, 12:30 Monday night, and comes to us, head injury. This person has to be light flighted off the island. Blood alcohol is 4 times the legal limit. There's no payment for this particular individual, and it took 2 hours out of our midnight so we can come back and do it again the next day. So again, is there an opportunity here is there an opportunity for us as an island to make this a little bit better? And kind of the last one here is this is actually probably a little less than you thought, you know, that we have 11% of people brought with a primary diagnosis of alcohol intoxication. But really, again, it's the idea, 7:30 Saturday night, our week is over. We're trying to recover, try to recharge for the next night. We are up at 2 o'clock for 2 hours with this particular person that has this critical care because they lost consciousness at a local establishment, no reimbursement. So was there an opportunity to prevent this? Was there an opportunity for oversight? I don't know, it's just a question. But this is something that I've really have struggled with, and I'm feeling more and more clarity around, which is that I've been here for 2 years almost. People have been wonderful to me. They've been very welcoming to me. But I've spent 2 years asking people what the medical center is, and every single time I get a different answer. So I think what it dawned on me is who are we? And that I think asking many of the stakeholders what their idea of it is that it's time for us to define who we are. We do primary care. We take care of tourist urgent care needs. We take care of business employees and employers. We do commercial driver's licenses for people that are on island. This takes a special certification that we do. We do behavioral health needs, welfare checks, hospice, population health strategies. We help a town with COVID issues. If you go to the next line, Allison, and urgent care doesn't do any of that. So please, we should not be defined any further after tonight as an urgent care. I will not define BIHS as an urgent care anymore. And I'm asking my team and my board to not allow ourselves to be defined as an urgent care anymore. We are not an urgent care. Because an urgent care doesn't do everything like this that we've done as part of our community kind of desire. It's our community obligation. So then this particular slide, we're getting close to the very end, is it's helping define the dilemma, right? Our primary care is growing. And these are questions we ponder in the office every week. Do we owe it to our island patients to expand these comprehensive services? And what do we do philosophically about these non-emergent urgent care patients from transient tourists on the island that are already exceeding what we would have normally budgeted in an office of our size? We have to be available for our primary care patients. We hear often from our patients saying that we are somewhat abandoned in the summer for the nonsense that happens in the summer. And we feel an obligation to take care of your diabetes 12 months a year, not 6 months a year. And I think it's led to some people leaving the island to go get care when you need real care, but come to the medical center when something you need in a moment. We're trying to change that behavior. Healthcare doesn't follow standard business rules. I think we've kind of laid that out from our presentation. And having reliable healthcare on the island is an asset to both our economy and the viability of our year-round population. We feel very strongly about that. How do we as an organization and with the help of stakeholders, how do we balance the burden of tourism with our responsibility to provide top-notch care to our island community?
Tom, on the back slide, I think you set it up nicely. I think we need to hear from you and your board as you guys define sort of who you are and what you're going to be and all that. I think the non-emergent urgent care is to me different than saying we are not doing urgent care or we are not urgent care. I think that's it may be a nuance, but it's a big nuance, right? So what I'm hearing from you is that non-emergency, that's how do we weed those out versus, hey, you know, if there's an emergency, we're going to, of course, help. Is that fair of me to say that?
I think it's very fair. Maybe some of it's just nomenclature that's common to us.
Well, I'm just making sure that especially people.
I don't want anybody to be under the assumption that we will not be here for 911. But what comes into 911 is things that you wouldn't call Narragansett 911 for. It's just a mechanism on the island that sometimes I need to get to the medical center and I don't know where to go. And they told me at the hotel or at my rental property, just call 911, call dispatch, they'll call 911. So what I'm trying to parse out is anybody that's injured in a critical way, we're here to be a partner with the town. But there are plenty of opportunities for us to improve our workflow and our burnout potential and be here for the rest of our island community in a more fresh way. If I would be allowed to triage those people differently. And is that the expectation of our town community? Is that the expectation? Amy has been very consistent with I should get out to the public and talk to the public. I think that's a different stance than quote unquote what we normally do. And I think that's part of a long-term cultural shift that we're willing to sit and talk to people about.
Dr. Workup, I think you should emphasize the fact that the burnout isn't just contained within your footprint at the medical center. It goes to the rescue squad, the fire department, all taken away from their jobs. God, I hated the late night calls, and they're usually the longer calls or the longest calls. So the collateral damage that comes with all this should be emphasized too.
I appreciate that you bring that up, because every time one of those 911 rescue squads, a couple island members have to get up and go take care of that, or leave their office and leave their job. So our goals over the next 2 to 3 years is to continue to grow and build into a physical space that meets our current needs and allows us to grow this vision. And this vision is to increase our behavioral health access and infrastructure, partner to increase kind of social services that's having care managers. It's really common medical practice now in US healthcare. We need to get a social services infrastructure, care managers to help our elders. And then really in this quality-based revenue stream to get to something that Mark had mentioned. We are now part of Integra, which is the accountable care organization that's in Rhode Island. This is a group of like-minded physicians and entities. South County Hospital is their hospital, that we want to improve quality outcomes, and we would like to move into a realm where we get either quality financial bonuses by better quality outcomes. And that takes time. That takes a good primary care infrastructure. And anything that takes away from that is that something that we really want? And so again, we're asking for ways to help us creatively manage through some of these things that are somewhat legacy. And this last slide is really, I want and we want to be here when that radio goes off. But I do need some of your help and your creativity to develop the medical system on the island that the island deserves. And this was to try to begin that transparency of our data. And I think also to try to get some good brainstorming of some things that we can improve together. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Doctor. Counsel?
Yeah, if you go back one page, Allison, that last bullet, reducing urgent care, I interpret that as us collectively doing anything it takes to maybe reduce the rate of alcoholism on the island, the bicycle and moped injuries on the island. All of that would assist in that last request. You might not be able to say it because you're diplomatic, but I'll say it.
I think we appreciate that accidents happen. I mean, we're here we understand accidents happen, but I would say, if you look at the slide about the moped incident, anything you could do to support the chief, anything you can do under the governances of how you manage and govern, if there's anything that can be proactive to allow reduction of those urgent care things that really produce injury to visitors of this island and our own island community, we welcome it. We're here for those episodes. And, you know, and I think Allison and I talk a lot about this on an operational level. US healthcare, certainly medicine doesn't operate under normal business rules. You would not want us to operate under normal business rules, because then this would look very different. Like you're closed at 11 o'clock at night. And think of all the downstream issues that would happen. So we're a partner. We want to be your partner, but we want to be an active partner.
Thanks, Doc. Sven, anything?
I did talk to Lars earlier today because I knew I'd seen the presentation when Allison, you and Millie got it out. And I know you had Chamber up there, and he is very interested in working with tourism, if that's the case, although it's a little out of scope, but maybe tourism, other folks, medical center, and how do we start to increase communication? How do we sort of partner up? I'm not sure if oversight's the word I would have used from the town, but I think partnering and working together, and how do we, whether it's information out to renters, whether it's information to hotels, I mean, making people a little bit more aware. I do think that those words of non-emergent urgent care is really the goal of trying to shrink that down. And I think we can all play a role in this. And, you know, I do really appreciate the data. I do really appreciate kind coming with all this so we can have this dialogue. I think it's really important. You have a unique business. I mean, it is sort of what it is, right? As you say, it's not a typical business. I think it's a vital part of the community. I think of schools, I think of medical, I think of police, I think of fire, et cetera. Those are core parts of the community. And I really want to make sure that we support it. So I'd love to help in that process of partnering and meeting and at least making sure that there's motion forward. Where that goes, we'll have to see, but we'll solve all the problems, but I think it can help that non-emergent urgent.
Tom, I'm still stuck on the Medicare and the reimbursements. It just drives me crazy that, so you made an analogy to Narragansett, like how many, so if I go to you for my annual, you will get reimbursed a lot more than you would say if somebody on Medicare went for you for the annual.
Yeah, that's generally right. If assuming somebody's on a commercial insurance, you will get paid more than if somebody's on Medicare. But think of the discounts are roughly in the same percentages. You take a discount on Medicare, the provider takes a discount on reimbursement on Medicare. We'll also take a fairly deep discount on commercial, even though commercial would continue to be higher than Medicare.
So would you say that, what is your demographic about how many people are going in for primary care? Do you think it's more people on Medicare or more people with private insurance? Because the reason I'm asking is because if now, the numbers, like if you're getting reimbursed on a higher amount of people on Medicaid or Medicare, then the discount's a lot higher on that amount. So between Narragansett, I'm just what I'm trying to ask, like you have a larger group collecting at a lot lower rate.
Yeah.
Then I know a lot of people have private insurance that do still go off island.
Yeah, and it's a system that we've collectively built in some way, shape, or form. And I would say that generally offices are in the 30 to 40% area of Medicare. And what we have identified is that many of those, when you saw New Jersey, Florida, Massachusetts, we get a fair amount of people that come with out-of-state Medicaid, so the state insurance, which we will never be able to participate in. You have to be within the four walls of those states. So that's automatically a zero reimbursement for us. Right. And you can't go after those individuals to balance bill because of the contract they have with Medicaid. So that's where I think with tourism, and again, I don't know what the answers are. I'm just asking for input. But to give you an example, a little bit as a philosophy, if our island community over 65 by the vast majority is Medicare, we would never say because Medicare pays less, we're not taking it. You have seen that in practices on mainland, but we would never do that because philosophically we need to be here for our elders.
And no, I don't think any of us here would allow that either.
But we can't shift our business model because of those particular processes.
But it is an issue. So it would be like the encouragement of more people with private insurance that actually do live here year round to go to you.
Absolutely. But we feel that we need to earn that respect. We need to earn that right and their honor to be their doc by having infrastructure in place where they don't feel like that they can't have access to their doc at certain times of the year. And it's a great feeling when we have, I saw a patient today that had moved off island and comes back on island to see us. We're honored by that, right? And we need to honor that trust by not abandoning, if that's too strong of a word, of people in the summertime because of the room that we have to make for non-urgent, potentially preventable, care.
No, I think in the end, the discussion is going to be tourism. I don't want to say tourism, but outside factors affect the way you operate, the way you're paid and whatnot, and how we can help get more money coming into you. Like, you mentioned some businesses stiff you by sending employees there because they don't, for whatever reason, when they should have workers' comp. How can we get that in line? How can we assist you with getting something like that in line? Is there anything the town can do to help you get that in line?
Yeah, we just hopefully give you some data and lay out some of the realities and transparency for us, and we look forward to any input.
Because I'm only asking, didn't think it was really something that I could actually talk, but as you get talking about the medical center, we realize that we've been having this conversation, each council, you know, at budget time. Well, hold on. Well, exactly, but it's the same thing. It's low reimbursement rates. It's a drain on the system from some segment of the system. And the bottom line is the people that live here year round are the ones who are either footing the bill or not having this, or having to give up some services.
Yeah, and I would say that, you know, Allison and I are going to work on the nuts and bolts of running an office and the finances of the office. I think what I'm looking for from our stakeholders is what is, in philosophy, what is the medical center to our community? What is it? What's the philosophy of what the medical center should be offering to our community? And we can then build it. And I think because of the lack of true identity of what we are, and we've often let other people define who we are, we've created this amalgam. And we want to move away from that to a more definable process so we can build it the best way we can. It's hard when you're being pulled in 7 different directions.
Oh, we certainly understand that, and I'm glad you've actually illustrated it quite succinctly here this evening. It always comes up about federal funding for rural services too. Has that been what, I mean, I know you guys are doing everything you possibly can, but it does come up.
Yeah, we have a committee specifically dedicated to the same issue that you guys are running into with rural health status. It's been quite clear that rural health status would be a status that we would seek based on a variety of factors, but a lot of that hinges on New Shoreham being considered rural under the medium income prices, things that I think you guys are working on as well. We piggyback on that very important piece of data. Everything falls into place, or at least gives us an opportunity to be successful as a rural health, which we'd have to apply for, we'd have to develop infrastructure for. It's not free, but it's something that we would be happy to build towards, which would give us another revenue stream, but it all hinges on the designation of New Shoreham.
What's the issue?
When our population changes, it shrinks and surges. When you shrink, there's one provider for, let's just easy numbers, 1,500 people. When we surge, we have one provider for 6,000 people. One you're rural, one you're a health professional shortage area, the other one you're not.
Who do we need to convince and approach to hear that?
So we've been communicating with the rural health department, the rural health director in Rhode Island. There was a change in leadership there, but Allison's got good connections there. We've spoken with Senator Reed's office. We're happy to talk with Senator Whitehouse, but we're talking to people at that level, and they've been very helpful.
So it's a federal issue, not a state level issue.
I would say it's a federal issue. Yeah, it's a federal issue. The computations that they use are typically always black box, but we're talking to the right people that understand. This is not unusual. We're not the only community that goes through this. You basically have a designation to lose. You have to argue to keep the designation.
Right.
You have to understand that every 3 years you have to argue to keep the designation. So if you don't keep your eye on it, it could slip. It could slip up on us. I mean, if we don't keep an eye on it, our 3-year window may pass. So we've been putting a lot of energy to it.
That's good to hear. But if you need, we can help on our own legislative level. We could probably help with Medicare, the reimbursements, even if it's just a shot in the dark, asking to lobby that office for higher, at least.
This is where the kind of moving to this quality-based care is kind of the future of US medicine. And I think trying to get a percentage or 2 more out of Medicare is like trying to shine up a dying car. It's going to be negative returns, rate of negative returns if we keep going down that road. We have to physically get out of that and get into a more modern approach, which we now have done with Integra.
Okay. Collection rates outside, do you guys do your own collections?
We have a soft collection process, but when it gets to a certain point, we have a collection agency. And we have those 2 pages to collection, and we can certainly give you more detail on it, but we work very rigorously about it.
All right. Well, as I said, I never thought it was important to go for a yearly every year, but when you started, I started going every year, and I couldn't be happier. So I totally support your recommendations to us. I just want to make it abundantly clear that if you need anything or assistance from this council, that we're here. But if you don't need us to step in, we won't. There's no need to. I guess that's all my questions on this topic.
Okay, thank you.
I think I'd just like to say, I'd really like the people who know what they're talking about to be talking to the federal folks and all. A lot gets lost in translation, and I think you're really the best people to be doing it and the best conduit. And of course, the town has always supported it, medical center.
Yeah, when Senator Reed came out, he helped us forge a better relationship with the U.S. Coast Guard. It was very helpful, and his office has put us in contact with a lot of good resources. And then our new Department of Rural Health in the state, Allison's been on it since day one, so I think we have some good resources.
I do follow up on something.
Yeah.
I do think that's really interesting. The perception that different people have of the medical center, because I've always lived here. I mean, I was away for 5 years, and it was so long ago that my experience with medicine on the mainland is irrelevancy to today's world. And just to realize that people see it so differently and treat it so differently is really surprising and eye-opening. And there's got to be a better way of, more effective way of communicating this out. I think it's really important that you.
I think the operative thing is that it's never been communicated.
Yeah.
It's been allowed to naturally develop on its own. I think that's why we needed to gain clarity for ourselves and get our own house in order. And then we can go out and speak with confidence about what we'd like to be, treated as and how we're viewed, and then we can build structure around that.
I think your clarity is critical before you start communicating. And now you get it.
Yeah, our internal clarity. We've spent more than a year with our board and with our operational team gaining clarity of what are we. And then now I think we're feeling more confident to say, here's what we are.
I think we also have a higher tolerance for it. I mean, living here year round, I mean, I've been up there, in the summertime and just regular stuff. And, you getting your blood pressure taken, and all of a sudden the moped wreck comes in and you're sitting there for a half hour, an hour waiting. And you know it, but like Martha says, you're like, oh, great. But you know it. You know it's coming. You know they're busy, and you just sit there for the half hour. But as we get more and more and more into the future and whatnot, and the place gets certainly busier and busier, that the local doctor with the little case just.
That was Wade Ortell. That was a long time ago.
Well, I know, but I'd like to. But like what I'm saying is that you go there for primary care, but you're witnessing trauma while you're there, and I really hope that we can change that mentality and attitude and get you paid for the services that you do.
Yeah. And we're working on it. We're just looking at this, make sure that you had a good understanding of some of those dilemmas, and and support us if you do hear that the medical center is taking a different stance.
And you're doing primary in the summer too now. Again, no, you just didn't do it during COVID.
We don't do physicals, and that worked out really well because way too often we wanted to honor that person with like a 45-minute visit, and 10 minutes later we're in there suturing somebody. So we've shifted that, and it's worked very well. We went through the pain of it, and now we're there for your diabetes and your hypertension, but we suspend elective physicals and keep it to the shoulder season in the winter, and it's worked out fine. It's not perfect, but it's better.
I better get in there. Go ahead.
It's not. Two things. One is sort of from the council perspective. The data that I found most interesting is that in a good way, people are voting with their feet. So, I've always thought that the medical center, having a medical infrastructure is sort of one of the three legs on the stool if you're going to have a sustainable year-round population. And the fact that the primary care caseload and individuals is growing, I think is a credit to you, but also sort of demonstrates to us that it's become more important over time as a town institution, if you will, because people like us are consuming their care there. So I appreciate that, and think we all ought to pay attention to it. There was one other question I was going to ask. It'll come to me, but I just think it's important that growth in primary care is very real, and I think it's becoming actually quite common when it didn't used to be that people are getting their care there, and think you guys should be proud of that.
Thanks, Keith. Julie, you have something?
I did, I was just gonna ask this, you brought up the statistic that 80% of the people coming in after hours are bad debts, right? So. is there a way-
82% of our bad debt are people that come in after hours.
Right, and I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to put all this together properly, but the reality is from May to September, where the blood island ceases surge, and you're always gonna see that surge, so how do we, could we staff the medical center, and I know I'm having a hard time with the staff in the national, to accommodate that, to be more proactive versus rather than saying, okay, we can't handle that, let's create almost two entities, one that's a primary care, but you are the urgent care, and the 25-year-old, I mean, I was there with that girl last summer, she was 25 in a panic from another country, couldn't even get around her own head, she wanted somebody to give her an answer, and there was no talking her out of that. So how can we create an environment that services that need separately, so that when you hire more people, can us as a community create?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's something that we grapple with, and there's a lot of ways to do it. But what I was trying to illustrate under way it works, I think a lot of people like in say businesses say more is better. And the opportunity here is it gives us more opportunity to lose more money. And so the scenario, so we don't have.
At the desk at 10 o'clock at night, or not, you weren't
Yeah.
pulling people in on call in the middle of the night, because reality is that's what's gonna happen.
Anything is possible with resources. But I would say right now, the resources reality, both fiscally and manpower wise, we would need a substantial improvement in support to bring on somebody just for the urgent care side of it.
But would that pay for itself in time,
No.
because?
No, that's why this is as much a philosophical question, but it's never going to be a financial question that makes sense as a regular business would run.
One of the questions, I remember the question, and that is dispatch a part of this?
Dispatch is an in-kind service that the town has been gracious to do. It's a process that we would love to partner with to kind of optimize certain aspects of it. But right now, it's a process that really dispatches after-hour calls to us, but it's not set up to triage any calls like a call center would.
Right.
We've looked into the financial burden of having a true call group as well, a call center, but it is something that we look to partner with further.
If I can, I think, again, my hope would be that, the town can, again, partner, whatever the right, we can all meet with Lars, if you guys want to, whoever the right people are to start to meet to figure out how to address some of these comments by the community. And I do think whether it's dispatch or there's maybe some form of a triage element added to dispatch or some way to screen, ask those key questions, and this may be beyond dispatch. So maybe there's a way dispatch gets to a 24-hour service type of thing that can help dispatch, but we can discuss all that ideas later. But some way to just screen so that you sort of vet, when somebody's very, very excited about this blister and they're out, that's one thing. But there are a lot of people that I think if they can get some answers and feel a little bit of confidence that I will make it to the morning, maybe there's a way to help that.
Sure. Yeah,
But I
we're
think-
happy to, we have some ideas about it, but we're happy to consume other ideas.
There has to be.
There is.
There is.
There is. Yeah, we were very close to having Brown emergency physicians doing it for us, but due to their financial issues, they were losing money in the ER, so they abandoned it to go back into the ER. So I do think the reality of COVID is that telehealth is here to stay, which is great. And I do think as that becomes more cost effective, then there will be an option for people that would like to talk to somebody at 2 o'clock in the morning and they have infrastructure to say, here's how the finances work. And if you need to be seen, then we get a communication from somebody that says, we're concerned about this urgent issue. But it would probably, if it holds to their numbers and we use the service like this at UNC, it ferreted out over 80% of the after hours calls.
Yeah.
They all were dealt with over the phone.
I think give him Momo's number. He's retired. He's retired EMT. I guarantee you they won't call back if they're drunk.
I gotta just tell you,
I'd be all set.
Andre jumped to the solution.
There you go.
I've been in and out of that medical center for decades, vertically and horizontally, and it's just outstanding. And I can't believe the job you guys do. You guys are just miraculous. You're wonderful. You're terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. One more question. Your last page, the needs of tourist, have you reached out to these other entities and given them, asked to be on their agendas for presentations?
No.
Chamber?
This was the first opportunity to have that stakeholder conversation.
Yeah, all right.
We will in the future. I think Laura's.
No, I think that would be a great idea
Talk with
to, ask the tourism council to come and give a version of this.
Sure.
So they understand, as well as the chamber and. All right.
Sometimes I think it's also about education, right? I mean, renters rent a house, they don't know anything about the medical center, so they'll normally call up at 9 o'clock at night and say, I've got a blister or whatever it may be. And if there was some information given to them.
Nobody wants to come here and be educated when they're on vacation.
Information given to them, that may.
Put it on their moped,
Thank you.
Simple information.
All right.
But that goes back again to, the perception and the reality and what you do. And I have found over the past 20 years, probably, Block Island has become increasingly splintered, increasingly divided. But let's talk about the great community. It comes together in a crisis. Well, everybody comes together in a crisis. Let's get over ourselves. And there's this reality that this person's reality, this person's reality, this person's reality, and they're all over the map in a way that, you used to have 3 of you and you could fight about it, wasn't that big a deal. But it feels now that that's really I keep going back to this because I'm just, I think it's so terribly important that I think a lot of things will follow as they hear you present.
Millie? Sean McGarry, on the line. Sean, do you have something to add?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I'm a business owner and been here for 30 some odd years and have seen a big evolution in the medical center. And I have a few responses to some of the issues that the doctors raised. And, I'm not going to say that I'm know how to practice medicine, but I know how to run a business. So he brings up triage. And my first response to that is, no one answers the phone over there. The only way to receive triage is via the rescue squad. What previously used to happen is that when the medical center was closed, the dispatch would answer and then they'd do some preliminary triage and then the doctor would call you soon after that. And then that triage was allowed to happen. Number 2 is the urgent care is billed at a higher reimbursement and a copay. So as a company, I think that the medical center needs to be proactive in collecting insurance information and that copay, after hours. And when a doctor's called in, I think administration should follow as well. And that's a decision they need to make as a business. But during the summer, the doctor talked about, 7:30 on Friday, the day ends. But, on Block Island, 5 o'clock on Friday night, that's when the week begins. I mean, as the urgent care facility for, sponsored by this town, we need them to be there for us, for our businesses, for our visitors, at night through the weekend. So, that's a responsibility that they're going to have to bear and figure out how to work through. Yeah. And then as far as the rural classification, this is my final point. And this comes from my involvement in the political system, is that the only terminology that I found in getting people to understand our difference from every other community in the state is geographic isolation. If you don't use that specific term, people don't understand what makes us so different from every other community in the state. Geographic isolation, that's the term you need to use at all times.
Yeah,
Thank you for for allowing me.
Right, the geographic isolation has actually been the key for ours keeping the road designation. This kind of gap of the water between the mainland is the difference, because when you look at geographic miles, we're not that far from other healthcare institutions, but when there's a body of water, it makes it a big difference. So Mr. McGarry is very right. The way the triage works, it works exactly the way you described. Triage, dispatch calls us, we call back the individual. So that's exactly how it works, just how you remember it. And we definitely will look into some of those other areas that you described. Some of it's inaccurate, but we look at kind of helping that discussion at a community level to try to say that here are the realities of possibilities. And I think it's true that for many businesses, I don't think the transfer station starts at 7:30 on Saturday night, but for many businesses, that is when they ramp up their revenue source. But when you're open in a normal business hour scenario and extended hours and then have to come in, it's not quite apples to apples, but I appreciate the comment. Okay, thanks. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Oh, hold on a minute. We have one more
Not here yet.
online.
742-0245.
742-0245. If you could identify yourself, if you have any comments.
Hi,
Hi,
Nancy Dodge.
Nancy Dodge.
Hey, how you doing?
Very good. How are you?
Okay, good. So I've been listening to this, and I'm still confused as to what the ask really is here. And I'm very nervous about this conversation of urgent care versus primary care. The medical center, originally focused on a form of urgent care. And urgent care was never viewed over the years as taking away from primary care. Urgent care is a critical need, whether it's summertime or wintertime, but more specifically in the summertime. And what I'm hearing is somewhat of a major policy change that's being proposed. And I think that that's going to need a broader community conversation than just the health services and the town council. Maybe I'm wrong, but some of what I've heard tonight is the lamenting of the medical situation in general, and I appreciate that. And goodness knows, we all know the problems with medical reimbursements. We all know the problems with insurance. But the fundamental purpose of the medical center and the needs that the medical center are going to provide, and when they provide them, is a policy issue that I see a proposal to change. I think we ought to be talking about this a lot more than just one night at the council meeting. My opinion.
So thank you.
Okay.
I know that it seemed ambiguous about the ask, but the only ask here of this presentation was to have a conversation with the greater stakeholders, including the community. This is one of many conversations that we wish to have, and I would say this is probably the first one to set it off. We are, I think the idea of, again, what people define the medical center is in their own light is they're welcome to it. But I do think the duality of doing primary care and urgent care well, when you saw 1,500 to 2,000 less people, it was easy. It was manageable. But now that we are seeing more and more people as the island, I think, kind of year-round community maybe grows or seasonal community grows, their reality is what we were 10 years ago can't exactly be what we are 10 years from now. And we need to continue to morph ourselves, and that tonight is just about giving some data and transparency and opening up that dialogue that philosophically, are we here for the urgent care? Are we here for the island community? Combinations thereof. And if any one of those are true, how do you best build that? That's what this conversation is the beginning of.
And I appreciate that. And I appreciate the fact that you're saying this is just the beginning of the dialogue, because that was what was concerning me, Doctor. I think this is a good beginning, but I think it is only a beginning, and it has to be a wider discussion across the island. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. No, he's
I
good.
think my wife is waiting for me. So before I need urgent care, I need to get going.
Primary care. Thank you so much.
Okay,
And
thanks, Tom.
thanks, Allison.
Thanks,
And
everybody.
Tom,
I thought we were having a building update.
sorry,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
what'd you say?
The building update.
Mutual interest, discuss items of mutual interest. If you got a building update.
Yeah, who's doing? Okay.
Yeah.
The building expansion update. Was sent.
Ray Torrey might be on the line.
Yeah, Ray
If
Torrey is
he's
on the
there, Ray can just speak to it, or I can, whatever's easier.
Allison, why don't you give us an update? You're in the room.
Yeah.
It's nice to hear from you.
How's it going?
The island's youth.
Yeah, so what's happening with our building plan is that you may have heard that our original plan was to try to relocate the medical center during construction. And the trailer, the estimate for the trailer has come back at an amount that was over $1 million. So that is definitely cost prohibitive for us. So at this point, we have to regroup, figure out another plan, because obviously the medical center has to stay open the entire time during construction. So we have to figure out how we're going to do that. And so it's really not back to the drawing board moment, but a moment where we're trying to kind of regroup on what's the best way to move forward with that. And as soon as we have those ideas, you guys will know.
Thank you. Council, have any questions or? Council, have any questions on that? Public have any questions on that? Statements, comments? Millie, is there anybody else? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Or I was just gonna say, Allison, if you can keep us pretty closely abreast. I know you and Marianne and Carly and Amy and others have been talking, and I think especially from a timing point of view or cost, and I think that's pretty critical that we continue this open dialogue, or get an open dialogue.
Do you want to touch on next steps now that you don't have the trailers? Is that plan definite, at least some of the conversation I've had, where you are as it relates to?
The fact that we don't have a trailer, that we're not gonna have.
Yeah,
trailers.
not doing the trailers. So you're moving now towards more of a phasing project
Yeah,
where they are no longer doing the top floor.
we just don't know that yet. In terms of, to be quite honest, everyone's on vacation. And so we need to regroup with our architect and come back with our committee and have a solid plan. That's gonna make sense. And again, we'll probably be dealing with a couple of options. And I think at that point, that's when we would bring you guys into the conversation.
Anybody?
I just said, regardless of what's happening now or what's going to happen, fundraising is still going on. And we need wonderful, generous people to come forward so we can make this happen.
Anything else?
Thanks, Mark. Anybody else? Going once.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. Hearing none, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded by Sven. All those in favor? Go ahead, Keith. Martha? I certainly am. Sven is in favor, and so is Mark.
Neil, Julie, thank you for coming, Kim. Thank you, everybody.
Good, how are you?
I'm actually.